All right, we are live. Welcome OSO fam to the next demo day. I feel like this is going to be a fun one because there's like a ton of stuff that we shipped this week. I feel like we have not taken a break to celebrate it yet, so we should totally take this opportunity to celebrate it because there's a lot of really cool stuff. Is it cool, Javi, if we demo the OSO terminal stuff first, just because it's like the most visual, palpable thing?
Yeah, I don't have access to my computer right now, but if I
Oh,
need to talk
I
and
can do
someone
it.
can share, I'll
Yeah,
talk
I'll
about it.
share, and feel free to pop in if you have any comments. So
Perfect.
this is the culmination of a ton of work. I can't take credit for, even remotely. Yeah, there's just so much that goes into something like this that goes across the entire team. So I'll try to shout out to people where I can. I've re-enabled the navbar headers for collections and projects. So if we go to collections, reasonably snappy, we're back up to business. I will give a shout out to Icaro for helping do some plasmic optimization. So it's actually much snappier and less error prone than it was before, which is cool. And then we can go to something like optimism, and these are our time series metrics by collection, which is like pretty incredible. So we can map, over all time, say the optimism ecosystem across that entire ecosystem, their commits, their issues, their contributors, everything. We have a gigantic list in here right now, which we need to organize better because the display names are total garbage. So I went back to metric name because the display names are really unparsable. But yeah, you can choose any additional metric and it will plot it. So that's super cool. And then this project, table is basically pulling all the projects from that collection and then just pulling the key metrics, a handful of key metrics that I set in here. And then the project page is really fun. Again, shout out to, I guess, Ruben and Javi and Carl for putting together all the different metrics and getting the pipeline running again. This is definitely a testament to all the power of our pipeline. So you can go to something like Uniswap. You got some key metrics up here. We can always add more key metrics. You got the same kind of, and then I just made 3 separate sets of charts. This is literally copying and pasting, but on one hand, you have some developer, metrics. On the other hand, you have some transaction metrics on different networks in the superchain. And then here we have some TBL metrics. I guess in this case, it's mostly Base and Optimism is where Uniswap is. And even though it shows like a subset of projects here, this is actually, the whole space of all projects. So you can just search in here and it'll start surfacing things that you wouldn't see otherwise. We just wanted our default set to be like pretty clean. But if you start typing, then we can take a look at another one and, see some stuff. You can also search up here. This is re-enabled again. So we can take a look at ourselves and, all the drop downs, everything seems to be working. We've been pretty consistently active for the better part of a year. So yeah, Javi, anything you want to add to this?
No. Sorry, I clicked by mistake. I wanted to emote. It looks awesome, right? It's a lot of hard work, a lot of time that has been poured into it, and it's just awesome to see it finally working and this clean. I'm super happy.
Yeah, same. Oh, okay. So this is a shout out to Javi. This wouldn't have been possible without Javi's pipeline. So thank you for doing this. But every model in OSO now is queryable in this currently hidden models page. But if you go to /models, it's there. So I can say like int events GitHub. Again, the default set is just like a really basic set, but I can search for anything here. What is this filter GitHub? I haven't seen this before. Okay, cool. And then so it's ugly. Like I get it. Like we need to add more stuff. It's like there's things we can do here to make it better. I think in the future, I'm imagining something kind of like what I showed as a reference to Javi is like, the biggest, most useful thing from the DBT documentation was really like twofold, right? It was Can I go to any particular model and can I see all the different columns and their types and how to query it? And then can I copy and paste something here to and modify it to do something, right?
We actually, yeah, SQL Mesh's UI might have that for the docs, but if we wanted to put it into, I mean, we
can definitely expose the SQL Mesh stuff, but I think like
no, I think it's better to have our own thing.
Increasingly, we're going to want our own thing.
Yeah, exactly. So we can get all the column lineage. We can get all the columns and column lineage stuff.
We just got to expose it in our model. And then in the future, you can imagine a world where you start embedding widgets where you can do like, live queries derived off this model, and like we can make much better features than or our own thing than SQL Mesh can. But I think there's a lot of cool stuff here that we can model. But anyway, this is kind of the start of it. This is basically the compiled SQL, and we can add more later. But yeah, this is all here, and hopefully, through experimentation, like I'm hoping Carl, Rohit, you guys, like all of us, can start introducing some of these things to the OP Labs teams, to the Number Nerds teams, to Kofi, like other people that might be using OSO datasets, people on the Arbitrum folks side of things. And our goal is to try to make this, as useful as possible, right? So the other thing that I'm really excited about is like, Rohit, I know Carl's played a lot with it. Rohit, if you haven't played with this before, happy to give you more of a rundown on how to do this. But this is all no code, right? So anything that you see on the page is fully editable in a WYSIWYG kind of editor. And so if you are editing this, you're directly editing production, which is pretty cool. So I can show you, for example, like it took me no more than 30 seconds to add a few more charts on the project page. Literally, I took the first chart, I copied and pasted it twice, and then I went here and I went into the chart, and there's a setting for metric choices, and I just changed which ones were selected by default, and then that's it. It took me 30 seconds. I published it, and we had like a better project page. So my hope here is that like between all of us, like it doesn't have to be an engineer, it could be anyone on the team, can like rapidly iterate with the customer, with the user, to like improve the experience for whatever it is that they need. And obviously, Igro and I are probably the most familiar with this tool, but like, happy to teach anybody that wants to make a change. It's all there. The other thing that I'm like super excited by is just how easy it is now to wire things into production, right? Like this whole models v0 thing would have taken, I'm guessing like 2x as long before all of the infrastructure that we set up. So, I guess this is obvious to us, but just to kind of show people how this gets wired up at the end of the day, it's like, what did Javi do?
So this is like a Dagster asset. So it's like also Dagster assets and the SQL Mesh render.
Yes. OSO Dagster assets, SQL Mesh
render. Yep. So that's the one who renders everything, and then we just consume it as a staging model and wire it up to mark. But yeah, it's like.
So this is like, 90 lines of code to pull down everything from SQL Mesh into a data asset. And then from SQL Mesh, we can wire up transformations. So we have staging models for SQL Mesh to basically pull, what we just created as a Dagster asset into a staging model. I think it's a pretty simple pass through to get it to models v0.
In SQL Mesh.
Yeah, SQL Mesh models v0. Really simple. Like if you think about the pipeline here, it's like pretty trivial, but 3 files, maybe 200 lines of code total. Then you go into Dagster and you run the job to actually compute the pipeline. And then one of the things that I added relatively recently is if we introduce a new MART model, you're going to have to refresh the GraphQL API to include it. And so there's, I fixed deploy Hasura here now so that you can just run the workflow from here. And this will automatically introspect the schema of anything that's a version MART model and expose it in our GraphQL API. And then you can just wire it up in code. So like this whole feature of like going from SQL Mesh models out to a web page was like less than 200 lines of code and just running a bunch of things in, you know, in tooling and infrastructure that we already set up. So I don't know. I'm really excited about finally being at this stage where it's like hopefully significantly easier to iterate and deploy things. Yeah, any questions?
One quick question. How is it handling different project sources? So if the same product appears in OP Atlas and our own source, will you see both of those as the display?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great question. We do not make it very easy right now, right? So this is the display name, right? But Velodrome here is obviously coming from, I don't know, it looks like 3 different places. 2 of these are probably from the same place, actually. And we have this notion of a project source. Now, in Plasmic, you know, you do have the ability. Oh, that's not right. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, okay. I think I introduced a bug there. I know how to fix that, but let me come back here. So yes, you're right. There will be like duplicates right now because we're getting projects from 2 different places. It looks like there's a bunch of duplicates. This looks like a bug. I'll fix this. But I think coming back to this project page, you know, we have the flexibility to experiment with this and what UX we want to show. Like, do we want to? One option is we merge it on the back end. I don't think that's a good idea. Personally, we could add a chip here that tells you what the project source is, right? So, for example, yeah, right now it's just telling you the status, but you do get the project source from the entity or the metadata, the entity metadata. So we could create a chip here that tells you what source it is. You know, there's a bunch of things we could do. I don't know. Yeah, we just need to go build it. So
Cool.
Yeah, but great question. Any other questions?
Artifacts, I assume those are disabled still, right?
I haven't touched them. I don't think they're disabled per se. I think they're just not. I don't think they're exposed anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not linked anywhere. I took out all the links. I haven't spent the time to update them because I think we still need to decide what we want to show there.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the other thing is that we haven't enabled. Yeah, so the other issue is that for artifact, all of our artifact tables are large, and we haven't added indices back into ClickHouse yet. We have them in DBT land. We don't have them post SQL Mesh. So until we add indices into ClickHouse, the lookups are too slow for it to really matter.
Yeah, that was my experience. Even just querying the API, it takes a while.
Yeah, I mean, we know how to fix these things. We just need to go do it. So, but yeah, that's hopefully relatively solvable. I have not looked at it, nor has that been a priority for me. Yeah, this sprint at least.
Yep.
But yeah, fair enough. Any other questions people may have? Base.
It's great. Looking real.
Base TVL. so much more real than we had a quarter
Yeah,
ago.
no, it's awesome. So very, very excited to actually
Yeah.
have a front on the internet.
And it's not, I mean, it could be snappier, but it's like, it's not, it's not bad. It's
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are optimizations,
definitely
just-
optimizations we can do, but like, this is pretty snappy or good enough for now.
yeah.
And definitely will help us with debugging in terms of like needing to plot and see where data is missing.
Mhm.
Hold that thought till after demo day.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but
We'll have to do some live debugging.
oh yeah. It's also cool to just see like where, because I think, the data does show you when these networks started, right? So here's a good example of like clearly base transactions is dominating. But you can start to see Inc has like a handful of transactions on Uniswap starting end of last year, I guess, which is about the time that they launched. But yeah, you can see like the birth of a network, and then for certain networks, it's like a rocket ship, like base, and for other networks, it's like still kind of slow. And you can see this is the growth problem they're trying to solve right now, right? But yeah, much more visible. Really excited. Cool. Happy to hand it off to whoever wants to go next. I know Carl, you and I worked on a bunch of like docs related stuff, but if you want to share all the docs stuff, that's
Yeah, let me take over now. I will actually start with the other user of our API, which is OP Atlas. So they are ingesting the same data. Everything is in staging right now, so I don't actually know which is the right preview to show of the actual time series metrics. But they are using the same data to calculate these kind of monthly totals right here. And so this is the project page. There are various links that come in from the project profile. There's some information about who is involved in the project. It's also registered in OP Atlas. And then this particular project, they had a on-chain builder submission as well as a dev tooling submission. So they're receiving rewards for both of them, much more for the on-chain activity than for their dev tooling activity. And then, yeah, you can see here are some of the headline metrics. It's not shown right now, but there will be time series charts. So you can see, just like what Ray showed, the TVL, transactions, gas consumed, addresses on a daily basis over the time series. And then because the season is running for 6 months, basically each month there will be a new update here. You click on March and you see the rewards for that period. You click on April, you see the rewards for that period, and so on. The other thing which is quite cool is that you can see other developers that are engaging or using whatever the Velodrome team has released. So here, these are 2 additional projects. I think if I click this, let me just check. Yeah, so it will take me to their product page as well. And so pretty cool. Now you can actually start kind of traversing the value chain and seeing how different projects depend on each other and learn more about what they're doing. Any questions on the OP Atlas side?
it's great to see this stuff come together.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like feature release constipation. Like our front end has been broken for literally like 2 quarters, and there's like 2 quarters worth of work that like you can't see. And then, okay, you get credit for the chart that shows up on the front end, but that literally took us less than a week to put together on our end, at least.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's cool to see it finally out there.
So yeah, there it is. And hopefully this will be going live tomorrow. Just got to make sure that these numbers are correct. Because it will be easy to find holes for any of these projects if there's issues. But I think we're in the finishing stretches, and that was my comment earlier about doing some last minute debugging. I think it'd be great to look at our values side by side against some of the things that we're getting directly from OP Atlas and from our own source data. In addition, so one way of consuming the data is through the API. The other way
Quick
is
practical question.
Yeah.
These project pages, they're fully public, right? Like I don't need to be logged in, it looks like, to be able to see any project's rewards.
That's right.
Like this, this is probably a secret staging link for now, but when this goes live, like anybody on the internet should be able to view any rewards for any month for any project. Is that right?
Yes, I think there will be, okay, there'll be something like this, which is a recipients page, and you can see any given project. I think you can filter on the round. Okay, yeah, this is working now. I think they're using dummy projects, but this will pull from the actual feed and we'll be able to see it. Yeah, you just see, get here. Okay. Oh yeah, okay, this is working again. Right now, this number is basically being hard-coded in there. We don't have the rewards functions running in production, but everything else is coming from, the API and from models that we have. So it's cool to see. Let me, one area that's been much more complicated than we thought, but just to kind of put it out here, is that when projects apply, they have, let me just show an example of this. So some projects, this isn't the right example, but the account abstraction is one, and that's why I've been using it for debugging. They don't have their deployer key anymore, so they're not actually able to verify ownership of the deployer.
No.
And so the only way they've been able to get their contracts added is by going through OSO and linking to their OSS directory slug. And so we have some logic for basically saying, if there's a project and if they share the same verified GitHub, then include all of the contracts that are associated with that, and then also deduping them, because there might be some duplicates. Like in this case, they have a few of the deployer keys, it would appear, but not all of them. And so what I think might be going on with some of the duplication logic is still how we handle that, or it just could be some old state that needs to be cleared out. But that's kind of the one gotcha that took a lot longer to figure out, is how to combine projects that are sharing artifacts from two different project namespaces. If you want to debug this stuff or do any number of other things with OSO data, you can also use PyOSO. We have some new documents and models that explain how to get working and use PyOSO. Yeah, that was my segue. The first step, actually, we'll just go to get started. So right now, this has been updated. You can get started with Python. And this is basically getting an API key and then going through the installation steps to get PySo running in your favorite notebook environment or something. You can also get the GraphQL API, which we won't give a demo of. Nothing has really changed here in terms of the interface. It's just we have more data. BigQuery is probably the least desirable path right now. So for anyone who's doing data science work, Python and PyOSO is where we want to direct them. It's a much better user experience as well. So they should want to do that. In order to get started, what I've done is refactored the tutorials that we had previously, which helped people get going using OSO data. So I'll pick like a simple example here. We have a collection view. So this will give you a tutorial of how to create something like what Ray showed on the product page, just using raw data. There's obviously some steps to get started. Once you're in, there are a set of queries that you can basically copy and paste into your favorite notebook environment. Execute this in Python. We also have the GraphQL implementation as well. So ideally, data scientists and front-end developers can kind of work side by side and test these queries in each one. Okay, I didn't do the order by in the GraphQL, but it's the same basic thing. And there's a number of examples here. As you get more sophisticated, there are some ones using on-chain metrics. In GraphQL, you have to kind of stage you have to do the queries in steps, and then use that to request the right collection ID and the right metric ID. But in any case, all this is working. We have a very detailed set of documents that we prepared for Optimism or for OP Atlas to help them figure out how to get all of our data and create the site that we saw. All these queries are working. They're pretty powerful if you just stop to think about all the different ways you can combine them and what you can learn about projects. So there's a lot here. I do also like having the curl version, so I can just test that everything is working. And then, so once you have learned PyOSO, you've mastered that, and you have some ideas for new models that you want to contribute, we've also created a guide to getting started with SQL Mesh and eventually writing your own models. So part 1 here is really just the steps to get everything installed on your machine, to run basically OSO on your machine, get a set of data that you can use for local testing, and then basically materialize all of the virtual tables for everything that we have basically. So this is the steps for getting going. This probably has more stuff than we need right now as we're looking to simplify things, so we'll have to refactor it a little bit. But in general, this covers all of the major workflows that we've been encountering. The next guide is for someone who's looking to write their first model in SQL Mesh, how to go about it. We'll probably have to separate this into multiple docs as well, because it kind of combines a couple things here. So it's a bit of an introduction to how we do things and why we have intermediate models and staging models and MART models and how they're versioned and semantic differences between them. It also talks about some of the core concepts that you need to know in order to be effective in SQL Mesh, like using IDs and where those IDs come from, how we think about event types, and then also the concept of metrics. So basically, in order to be effective in SQL Mesh, you really need to kind of master the idea of what these different entities are, the different event models, and then how you can create metrics on top of them. So try to do that here. And then there's a number of examples that you can see of how to compose with these different things. So you can read through that. The other thing which I tried to include here as much as possible are some kind of things to think about when you're determining your strategy for what to materialize and whether to partition it, and how to think about things like grains and starts and so on. So there's probably a lot more that could be written about this. But in any case, this gives a number of examples. It takes like some models and deconstructs what everything means and why it's been set that way. So hopefully this will be kind of a comprehensive guide for someone. And as I said earlier, we'll probably refactor this to one version here, which is write your first model in SQL Mesh, and then a lot of the other things can be pushed to reference. The metrics models are a whole nother beast, right? They are deceptively simple, I would say. Like once you understand how this works, they are incredibly simple. But there are a lot of things that you kind of need to understand how the different pieces fit together in order to make effective use of them. So I think it's really cool. The definitions here, again, given some examples of how to create a metric model, how to include it in the factory, and then some special cases that you might need.
Sweet.
And yeah, I think that's it. The one last thing I'll say is that we will be pushing the latest data to the retrofunding repo, which is where other data scientists are doing analysis, and the number nerds. I haven't done that yet until we finalize the metrics, but all of that is hopefully ready to go. Yeah. Any questions on docs or comments?
Yeah, Ruben, have you done a pass through the docs yet?
I haven't been able to do pass through. No, I will. Yeah.
Yeah, like I get that this write a model in SQL Mesh right now is really like, I think in my head we're gonna want to separate it into like a write a model in less than 10 minutes version, and then a full SQL Mesh guide.
Totally.
This right now looks like a full SQL Mesh guide, but while it's in this state, Ruben, like, yeah, if you could do a quick pass, like I need to brain dump as many things in your brain as possible, because like there's probably a ton of things in here that are not covered, that is still only in your brain.
Sure. Yeah, I will take a look. Yeah.
The other thing that I've done here,
as well.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And I'll give it a shot as well, just following through as a guinea pig and see where I stumble.
Awesome.
Yeah, part of what I've tried to document here is a workflow for contributing models. And obviously, every data person will have their own workflow that they find most comfortable. But there are kind of a number of steps that you need to do somehow. And so I've also tried to document that here. Rohit, I would love to kind of observe you as you try and do these things and figure out what works for you. And see if this is kind of a good workflow to do for other people, or maybe we can simplify it, or maybe there's some steps that I've missed.
I think, Rohit, if you're comfortable like saving a loom of like the complete raw experience of you going through it for the first time, it can be hours long. That's fine, but like it would be really valuable just to see.
Yeah, that'd be helpful for me too, even to
Awesome.
see what others struggle with.
Yeah,
there.
I can do that shot. Yeah. Go in there cold turkey. Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, the one last thing is that in addition to these example models that I shared, I need to link them, but there is a notebook that you can just fork, which is now in the Insights repo. So you can actually, if you want, just fork it and start with that.
Small remark as well, the REST factory docs have been updated, so people can use them again, and it's like the new Diffilama setup. So yeah, that's already new if people want to use that factory. GraphQL's still being done, but yeah, that's the new one.
Nice. All right, that's it for me.
Cool. What's the order here? Yeah.
Talk about models if you want to go next.
Sure. Yeah. It's probably a natural for that. So yeah. I guess some of the things that we need to talk about, mostly just as FYIs for everybody here. Oh, is it requesting to bypass the system? Hold on, I guess I haven't used Google Chrome to share my screen in a while. All right. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we've actually gotten rid of int events, which is really nice. But so that has some implications. So previously, what was happening is we were int event was like deeply entangled with a bunch of different things. But now, so if anything changes fairly massively in, say, the GitHub data or the or blockchain or whatnot, if we have to do like some big backfill if we're missing data, previously that would have caused literally every model, all the metrics models, to just recalculate themselves, and kind of terrible, really, really annoying and long and expensive. And now that is no longer the case. Things are actually going to be separated. So so we have these different streams now of events, and I kind of want to just show you guys like how I sort of envision all of this. So if you look at models, this is not going to be like the perfect representation of it, but we now have these, or we've had these for a while, but they're no longer joined together. Int events blockchain, int event dependencies, funding, etc. But one of the things that I will likely be doing is taking things like this int events daily with lag, which does add some additional columns. We will probably be joining all of this into single sets of like, this is GitHub related events. And these are the additional fields. So we no longer have to create these auxiliary tables, because what's happening is that when we use them, we sort of treat it as though, there's an int events interface. Like it's a conceptual thing, but it's not an actual thing that an actual model that we actually need to reference. So yeah, to the extent that we can keep things as much as possible partitioned by like where's the large data source that is going to cause this to recalculate itself, to the extent that we can separate that by like very large data sources, that's always better for us. It just means SQL Mesh won't recalculate those things when there's an actual change, if there's a backfill, etc. So, it only recalculates when there's an actual change. So if there are no changes, it doesn't do anything, which is always a good thing for time and for money. And then the next thing, which let's see if I can show this. We now have rolling windows. So there are a couple of things with this. Or sorry, not now have. We replaced the rolling windows with this concept that Ray and I were talking about recently. We instead of doing the rolling windows, we've tried to figure out something that we could do that was, going to be more inside of Trino, because basically all the things we were doing was essentially writing our own query engine, and we just didn't want to do that. Even though, the rolling windows that we had them were kind of cool because we could actually go like every single period we could figure out backwards. Instead, what we're doing now is we are doing it just like the time aggregations, but we're doing them in larger aggregations. So we have quarterly, we have monthly, we have quarterly, biannually, and yearly now. I know that biannually and yearly, I wanted to name that annually, but then yearly is the actual internal SQL thing. So I tried to, so there's no bi-yearly sounds very not correct. So biannually is every 6 months, and then yearly is every year. So then on top of that, I had to rewrite some of the things that use some of the rolling window macros, either some of the rolling window macros or just remove some of those entirely. But essentially what we do now is we bucket things into quarters. We bucket them into 6-month periods or into a year. And then we can just use normal SQL to look backwards, so like lag functions, like window functions. So if you look here, actually, we can look at the lifecycle metrics. And I realize I'm only looking through code right now. So lifecycle. Yeah. So the lifecycle metrics actually have been simplified quite a bit. So what we do is we pivot everything into a single table in this history. And then we so we can look at things like active users, active contributors, full-time contributors, part-time, new, and resurrected. So resurrected are those who would come back from a long time having not used it. So we get those counts from some other intermediate model, which is the contributors classifications. And then we turn those into lifecycle metrics. So we can now have the change in full-time contributors, change in part-time, change in new, and then also change in active, but and then also maybe the more interesting one is churn. So we can do all of this with just these lag functions, which I think, if you're used to SQL, this is going to be much more straightforward than what it likely looked like previously. So,
this is clean.
Yeah, it's much nicer. And then you just so unfortunately there's a crappy I had to do a crappy unpivot to get them into our metrics schema, but because there's a bug in the doing an unpivot with an unnest in Trino, so I just didn't want to.
So what happened to the where is the MCS stuff?
Oh yeah, so the MCS stuff, it's all the code still exists. All the code is still tested, so the tests still run for it. It's simply just not being used. So when we reconfigure these things in models, Yeah. Oh yeah, I guess I should remove some of these comments. We're only doing these things now. So like monthly, quarterly, biannually. So active days is just, you just set the time aggregation. You don't need to do rolling at all. The one thing to note, and I tried to fix this, I tried really hard to fix this. The front end is going to have to not, so if there's a period, let's say if you're on the quarter, you should not take the current in progress quarter and render that on the front end. That will not have numbers that are useful. So,
What numbers will it have? Will it be zeros or will it be?
no, it won't be zeros. So for things like active developers and stuff like that, so the developer classification is where it will make no sense. Mostly that this full-time ratio is based off a set of days. I really tried to get it such that so there's no logic right now to say, hey, like choose this quarter or up to the current day. That logic doesn't exist. I could try to do that part. I was trying to actually just make it so that SQL Mesh just would stop at that before, like it completed. But setting that actually broke a bunch of tests because of honestly, I think a bug in SQL Mesh. So I would
That's fine. I'm just trying to understand how to interpret this better. Like if we like today, by definition, when we plot it, like there's no logic for this. So what will I see?
Oh, yeah. So so you would see, well, so today I guess is the start of a quarter, right? So you actually would see, it would be perfect data. So it would all look really nice. Yeah. Because then you would see last quarter, and then maybe you would see today, but today's values would likely be like a bunch of zeros, right? Like you should just I would imagine that many of it would be like zeros, especially for developer classifications. Pretty much all of that, like except for active, all of the other numbers like part-time, full-time, those would show zero, like 0 part-time users, 0 full-time, because this full-time ratio is based off of 30, like 10 over 30 of a given time period.
I'm just trying to get a straightforward answer of like, let's say like 3 days from now, like what should I expect to see?
Oh yeah, 3 days from now, the quarterly, like April 1st quarter, right? So the quarters are the time buckets start at the beginning of their times, right? So the April 1st quarter will show probably a bunch of zeros. Yeah, like the life cycle metrics wouldn't be very nice. It'll show like basically everybody dropping off. Yeah.
Okay. And so the way to solve for that is to trim the rightmost data point.
Exactly. Trim the rightmost data point.
Yeah, that's easy enough. We can add that. Cool. Yeah, no worries.
And yeah, I would plot this, but yeah, we found some duplicates. So before we copy this into ClickHouse, I wanted to clean that up. So running the restatement of that, actually, I think I kicked that off already. So yeah, and then
so if you configure rolling windows right now, it will still activate the MCS. Like
so the MCS has a current like a short circuit. It'll just
that's right. Okay. But if you get rid of the short circuit and you configure rolling windows, it's all still there, is what you're saying.
It'll all still work.
It's just like you use time aggregations to do the same thing that rolling windows does, but not with rolling windows, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the funny thing is, I actually think that the lifecycle metrics and maybe the classifications would be faster using the rolling window functions, but based on how it worked yesterday. But this just keeps it all simple and it keeps it all in tree now. So I'd rather do that. So
you're saying the actual performance would
the actual performance, yeah. Because the lifecycle metrics is only looking at metrics data, which is actually very small in size, right? So it's not going to be many terabytes.
DuckDB is faster than Trino, is what you're saying. So,
exactly. DuckDB is just faster.
That's fine. Trino's Trino, whatever. The other question that I had is, it seems like this, like, we it seems like the need to restate is happening very frequently, at least what we've seen in the last couple weeks. And so I'm curious, like, what's causing that? And is
Yeah.
that-
So I think so. There are a couple things actually. So I put in an issue to just update Trino to the latest version. It's literally just a single line change to get our thing to update that. I think there was a bug that was introduced in Trino that in like 469 or 470 or something like that is the versions. So that has been causing some weird failures on Iceberg. I believe that there's a fix in like 472 that fixes what we need, and we're at the update will get us there. Basically what happens is Iceberg will Trino will still report like that everything succeeded, but will miss like a single day of files or something like that.
Bug. Yeah, that makes sense. I was worried that it was something more like there was something more SQL Mesh related, where it was like by definition, if Trino was working fine, then what this told me is that like SQL Mesh doesn't calculate.
No, it's
in the way that
I mean, SQL Mesh it really tries its best to do a good job there. So I think it's still functioning correctly.
Okay. Cool.
I think the annoying thing is that SQL Mesh doesn't have a really, at least not for their free product, the open source product, I should say. Not for the open source product. They don't have a really easy way of being able to like introspect state and then be like, hey, you know what? Like this state is actually corrupted. Please recalculate that, like the next time. So we've had to do some manual stuff, but I'm hoping that just upgrading Trino is just going to solve that. Or upgrading the latest Trino is going to solve it. So if it doesn't, then we'll have to, I don't know. We'll cross that bridge. So yeah. And then the other restatements related to metrics in general, because we actually are doing metrics for most of the universe, if not all of the universe. So so we should only need to restate if we're fixing bugs, basically. So, and that's we had some dupes, we fixed those dupes, but we had not yet restated all of the time series metrics. So that is what is currently happening.
Clarification on what you just said there. We are not doing metrics on the universe of GitHub, right? Like not even remotely the close of the universe of GitHub.
I checked the other day. I am not filtering those things right now. So it is actually the universe of GitHub. So you could put all GitHub on OSO right now.
Sweet. Let's do it.
Wait, really? It's
yeah. The time series events is not using the filtered set. Time series metrics, excuse me.
But there's no interesting. Okay. Wow.
Nice.
I am fairly certain. I might be missing.
It's cool.
This is the data set.
I feel like there was a time when we were can you even remember a life when we were still on DBT and when we were like, this is oh my God, when are we ever going to do this kind of thing?
Yeah, and then we did it by accident here.
Like, oh, we forgot to filter. Turns out we're indexing.
I was looking at it the other day. I was like, man, why is it taking so long? And I was like, I understand now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think these types of things, I don't know. We'll have to think about how to tweet about these things because, like, I don't know that we're doing a good job communicating. Just like
this is true. Yeah.
This is like super cool.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it on my side. I mean, other than the SQL Mesh presentation, which I still don't see a video or anything for, because it would be cool to share with the team. I don't know, how good it was as an audience member, but I thought it was useful for people. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to see that.
Yeah. So if we have the universe, would the project's model have every single repo in it?
Yeah, so projects is the part where things get filtered, but artifacts,
Okay.
yeah. So projects, that's the only, like, we're not doing the universe of all organizations. That's not
Right.
That's just
Okay.
because we don't have a project registry.
Right.
There is no such thing as a project registry of all organizations. But if we had one, we would be already wired up to do it. Right?
exactly. Yeah.
Like if there was some Linux authority that told us like these are all the projects in the whole world, then we would have it. But that doesn't exist. Maybe OSS directory will be that one day. We'll see. Cool.
But I guess, yeah, I mean, that definitely means that if we take something like Gitcoin, right, which they have their own project registry, we can just do that now. We can literally namespace it and we can go, and it doesn't actually require anything upstream of that, which is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right.
Great. Yeah, I can go next on the.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so while I'm pulling this up, this is about the GG23 retro metrics. So just as a context, this is the first time Gitcoin's running a retro round, and we helped them earlier in the year to sort of come up with a criteria that was data-driven to select who would those projects be, who would be eligible for the retro round. It's been treated as a premium round where you'll get a certain weightage based on you being a consistent grantee in the ecosystem. So it's highly curated. Only 30 projects made it. What this blog post and the data, and then there is a notebook attached to this as well, outlines are what are the metrics that are going to go in that the badge holders will prioritize, and based on how they assign weights to all these different metrics, the capital allocation will happen. It's a pool of about $600,000 that will be distributed amongst 30 projects based on the badge holders voting. I think it's very similar to retro PGF4, I think that Optimism would have done in the past. So real quick, the metrics fall into three broad categories. The first one is based on just the GMV, or the amount of money allo processes, and is related to the growth of Gitcoin. The next one, we have some metrics around the users or the contributors who donate to these projects, and how has that base expanded over time, how many are returning donors. And then the last criteria is around metrics around just consistency in builders working with the projects, and how many of those builders are still around vis-a-vis a point in the past. So we selected GG18, which happened in August 2023, as the start of the window for this allocation, all the way up to end of January. So it's about a year, a little over a year and a half of the metrics that will go into this. So yeah, real quick, in terms of allo GMV, we look at the amount of matching funds that the project has earned over this period. How many of these projects have participated in rounds that Gitcoin doesn't necessarily host as part of the core rounds, but they help bring in more donors into the fold. In terms of donor base, we're tracking how many donors were retained round after round, as well as how many new donors were attracted to these different rounds. Another interesting one is if you're a grantee, how much of your donor base also contributes to other projects. So we were able to calculate average number of projects supported by a grantee's donor, and the broader donor base you have that contributes to more projects, the more weightage you will get as a grantee in the ecosystem. And the last category is around developer retention. So we tracking active developers, which is straightforward. We figured out a way to get developer retention more in a normalized way, such that it's basically calculating the average time between a developer's first and the last commit. So this way, we sort of give somewhat of a level playing field for different team sizes. So if you have a team size of 20 or 2, if you have consistent contribution, irrespective of your team size, your average time between the first and the last commit helps you sort of get more more capital. But what we figured was because Gitcoin is such a broad spectrum of projects with different sizes, if we calculated the developer retention as a ratio in a more traditional way, it was really unfair on some of the larger projects where if you're a project with 1 or 2 developer team, you will almost always have 100% retention versus somebody someone large. And the last one is around the new contributors onboarded between that time period. So I can try and pull the data set here. There's a notebook as well attached to this, which is not based on PyOSO, but the models that we had in the Gitcoin. So I think the future version of this will have the Gitcoin models, which are built into PyOSO. Hopefully my screen is still coming through. So this is the data that'll go into the product that Gitcoin's building for retro funding. And then based on the badge holders' votes, we'll be able to see the allocation here. And we are a minute short, so let me pause here and see if there are any questions.
I'm gonna assume that you're not using the lifecycle metrics that Reuven just displayed, right? So because he just did that. So like how are you calculating these metrics right now?
Yeah, so these were pulled in from the existing BigQuery models. I think, and then Carl helped me get the developer-related, GitHub-related data from some of the intermediate tables. So this is a combination of what we get from Gitcoin, the funding data, combined with the developer data that we get from GitHub. So yeah, there is a like a net notebook that goes on a step-by-step calculation for each of these verticals. But yeah, that's, I think we just got this down between transition. So we picked up whatever the data sources that were latest and greatest for us.
That makes sense. I don't know when's the last time we ran the DBT job, but like how outdated is the contributor data here? And I guess hopefully it's not too hard to wire it into the new stuff to get fresh data.
No, we got fresh data from PyOSO for the GitHub activity.
Oh, okay.
The project, the Gitcoin data, which came from BigQuery.
Got it.
Yeah, the donation metrics. Yeah, and those don't change until there's a new Gitcoin grant round. So yeah, it wasn't bad at all. Yeah.
Wait, speaking of, the round just opened today. Is that right? Or
the quadratic fund will open today, and then the retro will open in a week. Yeah.
Okay, so OSO is in there. Anybody who has some arbitrary ETH should go in and donate to OSO.
Nice. On that note, I forgot the thread. Like, there was like, we talked about a while ago, the regen data that we had was stale and wasn't being refreshed. And did we ever debug like why that was, or if that is something that's easy to just get rewired again?
They're two separate issues. The regen data is not being maintained by Gitcoin going forward. So I think we need to take a snapshot. And then if we want to continue getting Gitcoin data, we get it from whatever the new source will be.
I see.
Separately, there was a point in time when our DBT project model broke. And any product ID was basically any Gitcoin model that relied on our product IDs broke. And so we still have the raw Gitcoin data, but we weren't able to join it up on an OSO project. And so since then, what Rohit has done is kind of, because only 30 projects, he did that mapping manually.
Yeah.
And we got the GitHub activity from it.
I think, I mean, I think the right way to solve that in the future is like, all of our Trino stuff still points to the same source data, right? So like we could have just moved the staging model over to SQL Mesh, had it compute project IDs in a better way, and it would have worked fine, right? But that's fine, not a big deal. I mean, I guess I'm still trying to figure out, I'm just trying to get a better picture of like, where does all this go? Because like so much has moved around and so much is stale. I'm assuming like all the Gitcoin data now is stale because it's only just regen data and like some handful of passport dumps that we had. So I think what I'm hearing is in the future, we're going to have to set up a new SQL connection with whoever's maintaining whatever is the new database.
I think there are 3 steps. Step 1 we need to take a snapshot of regen data because that might go down and it might just be gone. So we should have our own version of that we can host and keep, right? It's like 2 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
hey,
already
Joel.
Hey, Joel. We already have that. It's
Yeah. So that's it. We just take a snapshot and
no, but we're done. Like it's there. That is the snapshot. We're done.
Well, they have made some changes. I just want to double check that there aren't any weird things that have happened because David Gasquez appeared to be having some issues with regen data. So anyway, just want to check that. Step 2, we need to recreate the staging models that we had previously in DBT in SQL Mesh. That's Rohit and I's little side quest for learning SQL Mesh. And then number 3, TBD, but maybe Joel has some ideas here, is whatever the new source is that is not regen data, how do we pipe that in?
Yeah, Joel, how do we get Gitcoin data these days? Can you tell us? Maybe we'll deal with it async then. While Joel's figuring out his mic, anyone else have questions? Cool.
Okay, sorry. What were people saying?
We were asking what is the latest way. We used to get our Gitcoin data from a Postgres, database replication from regen data. What is like the new way or the clean way or the maintained way to get a live replication of all Gitcoin data?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm also trying to figure that out because my QF calculator, COCM website was also pulling from regen data, which is, I think its existence is kind of up in the air. Like, we're not really sure if we want to keep maintaining it or to just squish everything into like the indexer. So yeah, I unfortunately can't tell you right now, but we are definitely going to have it figured out by the end of GG23.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, we're 5 minutes over. I don't know if anyone else has questions, but I'm cool to end it here.
Awesome.
I know Javi had to jump off.
Oh, sorry. Did this start? I thought this started 5 minutes ago. Did it start like an hour? 5 minutes ago?
It started at an hour ago, an hour and 5 minutes ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's my bad.
We will put it on YouTube, so you should check it out.
I must have gotten the time zones wrong when I added it to my calendar. Okay.
No worries. All right. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Thanks for dropping by, Joel.